Started right away at the Montessori nursery school. I stayed there until I was 6, at which time I started in first form. In the sixth form, my teacher was Mrs. Cooperess, the headmistress. At the end of the year, we were both in tears as we said a heartbreaking farewell. In the summer of 1941, Grandma fell ill and had to have an operation. So my birthday passed with little celebration. So here author is explaining that she was sent to Montessori nursery school and it was her first school, and she started from first form, and she had Mrs. Cooperess, the headmistress, as a teacher in sixth form. When she was in sixth class, sixth standard, she had her headmistress as the teacher, who even also cried at the time of farewell. In 1941, what happened was the author's birthday could not be celebrated well because her grandma fell ill. And what happened to her? Because she had to undergo an operation. Grandma died in January 1942. No one knows how often I think of her and still love her. This birthday celebration in 1942 was intended to make up for the other, and Grandma's candle was lit along with the rest. The four of us are still doing well, and that brings me to the present date of 20th June 1942 and the solemn dedication of my diary. So unfortunately, the author's grandmother left them in January 1942. She passed away, and Anne misses her grandmother more than anyone knows. This year's birthday was to be celebrated with great zeal so as to compensate for last year's. So she's saying that everybody is trying to compensate the loss of grandmother with this birthday celebration, but this couldn't be happen. She then mentions that her family is doing well, which is sum ups her background, and she doesn't want to talk more about that, and brings her to the present date when she started writing diary of June 20th 1942, and when she is writing her diary. So this is, let's see what she has started in her diary. Our entire class is quacking in its booth. The reason, of course, is the forthcoming meeting in which the teachers decide who will move up to the next form and who will be kept back. Half the class is making bets. GM and I laugh ourselves silly at the two boys behind us, CN and Jacques, who have staked their entire holiday savings on their bet. From morning to night, it's you are gonna pass, I'm not, yes you are, no I'm not, even G's, pleading glances, and my angry outburst can't calm them down. If you ask me, there are so many dummies that about a quarter of the class should be kept back, but teachers are the most unpredictable creatures on earth. So on June 20th, 1942, when N begins writing in her diary and she addresses her diary as her friend Kitty, she mentions how her entire class is nervous about their result, and it is unpredictable thing because it will be decided by the meeting of the teacher in which they will select the students to be moved to the next class or to be kept back. So many students were making bets. Some had put in their entire summer savings at stake. She and her friend G also made fun of the nervous boys there. They kept on saying to each other that I'm not gonna pass, while others would console them and say, yes, you would be able to, don't worry. So G was polite as she tried to stop them from making noise, while N scolded them, but none of it worked in the class. According to N, about a quarter of class should not be allowed to pass, because they hardly respond to take part in any of the activities. She refers to them as dummies, but this may not be the case because teachers' decisions can't be predicted. She think of the teachers as the most unpredictable creatures on earth. So she was of the view that it was not in her hand to decide who would go to the next class and who would be kept back. It was the teacher's job and they'll do their job. I am not so worried about my girlfriends and my son. We will make it, and the only subject I'm not sure about is maths. Anyway, all we can do is wait. Until then, we keep telling each other not to lose heart. So the author says that she's not bothered about her friends because she's sure that they'll pass. The only subject that she is unsure about is mathematics, and she seems to be having a tough time, having a hard time with that subject. She doesn't like that subject. She think that she couldn't able to get through that subject, but all they could do was wait and watch for the result and not to lose their hope. What can you write about that? I would worry about that later, I decided. I jotted down the little in my notebook, tucked it in my bag, and tried to keep quiet. I get along pretty well with all my teachers. There are 9 of them, 7 men and 2 women. Mr. Keesing, the old Fauji who teaches me maths, was annoyed with me for ages because I talked so much. After several warnings, he assigned me extra homework, an essay on the subject, a chatterbox. A chatterbox? So she tells that how she has a great relationship with all her teachers except the maths teacher. He was constantly irritated by the author's talkativeness in the class despite several warnings, and then stopped talking in his classes, which prompted him to give her an extra assignment, homework as a punishment. The first one was to write an essay on Chatterbox, which she thought was a weird topic to write because what could one write about that Chatterbox topic? That evening, after I had finished the rest of the homework, the note about the essay caught my eye. I began thinking about the subject while chewing the tip of my fountain pen. Anyone could ramble on and leave big spaces between the words, but the trick was to come up with convincing arguments to prove the necessity of talking. So the author came across the note that she made as a reminder for the essay after she had finished the rest of her homework. She thought that she forgot to write an essay, so she began thinking about the topic while chewing the tip of my fountain pen. She said, because when someone is in deep thinking, they start doing something which is weird. So she started chewing her tip of her fountain pen as a gesture of deep thinking, while anyone could mention random stuff written for the sake of filling pages, but she didn't want that. She wanted to come up with some convincing ideas. So she thought and thought. I thought and thought, and suddenly I had an idea. I wrote 3 pages Mr. Keesing had assigned me, and I was satisfied. I argued that talking is student's trait and that I would do my best to keep it under control, but that I would never be able to cure myself of the habit since my mother talked as much as I did, if not more, and that there is not much you can do about inherited traits. So she wanted to present concrete arguments in support of talking, and she came up with an idea. She mentioned that she will try to better herself as a student, but talking is something that cannot be eliminated completely from a student life. And she also gave the reason that perhaps because she got it as an inherited trait from her mother, and this is how she ended up writing 3 pages on that particular topic called Chatterbox. Mr. Keesing had a good laugh at my arguments, but when I proceeded to talk my way through the next lesson, he assigned me a second essay. This time it was supposed to be an incorrigible chatterbox. So the professor found N's argument to be amusing, but when she did not stop talking in the next lesson also, he gave her yet another assignment as punishment. And you know what the topic was? An incorrigible chatterbox. Do you know what is the meaning of incorrigible? It refers to that bad habit that is difficult to change. So he gave her this topic because he was annoyed for her unstoppable chattering during his lessons, and I handed it in, and Mr. Keesing had nothing to complain about for 2 whole lessons. However, during the 3rd lesson, he had finally had enough, and Frank, as punishment for talking in class, write an essay entitled "Quack Quack," said Mistress Chatterbox. So on receiving this assignment, the professor didn't say anything to her for a while, means for 2 other classes. When he lost his patience because she was unstoppable and she continued to talk in his classes, so he handed her yet another assignment as a punishment on the topic called Quack 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 Quack, said Mr. Chatterbox. The class roared. I had to laugh too, though I had nearly exhausted my ingenuity on the topic of chatterboxes. It was the time to come up with something else, something original. My friend Sam, who was good at poetry, offered to help me to write the essay from beginning to end in the words. I jumped for joy. Mr. Keesing was trying to play a joke on me with this ridiculous subject, but I would make sure the joke was on him. So when the professor scolded her for the third time for not keeping herself quiet in the class and punished her, the whole class laughed. And as a result, she had to pretend to be amused too when she laughed too at the situation. And after writing twice on the similar topic, she ran out of the thoughts, say, what should I write more on this topic called Chatterbox? So thus her friend Sen, who was good at poetry, offered her that I would help you to write a poem. The whole assignment was like something out of the blue now. This whole assignment scenario was to make Anne feel ashamed, but she made sure that she gave an effective reply. I finished my poem and it was beautiful. It was about a mother duck and a father swan with 3 baby ducklings who were bitten to death by father because they quacked too much. Luckily, Mr. Keesing took the joke right way. He read the poem to the class, adding his own comments and to several other classes as well. So, she finally wrote her third assignment in the form of a poem, which turned out to be great. She wrote a satire that her father swan bit his 3 baby ducklings to death because of their noisy nature. To her good luck, professor took it very nicely. He took it lightly, and the professor recited the entire poem in front of the class while giving his own remarks simultaneously into the other classes, and he had started cracking jokes with the class. He was no more as a strict teacher. He also had become humorous because of Ed now. Since then, I have been allowed to talk and haven't been assigned any extra homework. On the contrary, Mr. Keesing's always making jokes these days. Your N, extracted from the diary of a young girl with slight adaptation. So she was finally allowed to talk in the class uninterruptedly after this incident and she is not getting any more homework as punishment to write an essay on chatterboxes, an incorrigible chatter or quack quack like this. And also Mr. Keesing, the professor, also started cracking jokes every now and then in their class as well as the other classes, and he was no more a strict teacher. He had changed himself into a humorous teacher. And this is all about the story, and this was just an extract from her diary. I wish you would read the whole diary. It is very, very interesting, and it would lead you to the World War II, how the conditions were in that time. So I wish you would read the story. Until then, if you have any problem, you can put that in the comment box. I'll get back to you with the question answers of this chapter. Bye.